Hello and welcome everybody to Click Gaming's weekly podcast. Chance is here, as you can tell. Evan's here. That's me. Episode 6, yeah, Chance. um, like I said, this Click Gaming. You can follow us on the socials below. We're going to talk about the evolution of video games and kind of like where we've come from, where we are today, maybe where we see it going, and then also talking about why we play games that don't necessarily look all that great right now, like compared to modern hardware. So back in the day, back at when we first started, games were. Still, obviously, we're still in the very beginning stages of not just esports but gaming. You had, Pong. Obviously, you have, your Atari and pinball, Pong, and obviously those games look absolutely ridiculously bad. I guess graphics on pinball aren't that you can't really compare them to anything, um, as you always joke, 2 pixels per square inch. PS1, that was my first gaming console. I'm remembering what they looked like, those character models, and I had a racing game where the people's bodies were triangles and their arms were floating, didn't have necks,
Right.
Just like horrible character renderings. And that's just, what do you, I guess software was just horrible back then, or hardware, I guess. Software was probably pretty decent for the time. I don't know. What do you think?
Kind of backstory with our idea what to talk about this week was we've kind of come a long ways since early video games, right? We had, Evan brought up Pong, but Atari games, right? Like Galaga, you got Pac-Man, you got like these very simplistic two-dimensional video games that were created back quite a while ago. But anyway, but every time we got better hardware and hardware got, we get faster and faster, and software improved too. But really, the hardware is driving factor on most game renderings. And so as that hardware increased and got faster, right, we ended up getting games that are more photorealistic, right? So over time, we developed more and more games that were resembling real life, right? So you could render like Galaga, right? It was just like a spaceship like character like thing, like a little picture that moved and shot the things that like it wasn't, and you had Space Invaders or whatever.
It was an XY game.
Right. So like there wasn't very crazy graphics rendering, right? And then we got rasterization and stuff come a long way, and we got 3-dimensional rasterization, right? So we could actually draw a 3-dimensional model on screen and give you a 2-dimensional view of the 3D model. So you could have a lot more dynamic video games. And then over time, right, the textures got better, and we were able to model more and more real life movement and stuff, right? So like character movements got better and better over time. And over time, right, we just as hardware progressed, like we were able to do more and more with the hardware. And we kind of reached a point at some point in time where we kind of diverged of like there were still some games pursuing that photorealistic, like real life look, and there were some games that were like, we don't really care what it looks like, right? We're just gonna have cartoon characters basically, right? So they're not really too concerned with pushing the hardware to its limits. It's more concerned with designing the game and making a good experience in the game. So we kind of have these two different divergent things that kind of came about. Once hardware got to a certain point where it could run most games pretty well, kind of diverged and said, okay, well, these people are going to go down this photorealistic version, like Call of Duty is kind of photorealistic, those style of games versus the Fortnites versus the Minecraft, that type of stuff.
I was going to say, and looking bad might not necessarily be not HD. Because you say cartoon, like a cartoon can have like really fine pixels and be like a really smooth character.
You can render anything at freaking 8K, but it still doesn't matter what it's like texture sizes and stuff, right? That matter, and so like you can render it however high detail you want, but at some point you're going to hit the what your textures can do, and so like the Fortnite, the Minecraft, the Roblox, those things are very simplistic textures and are pretty straightforward to render usually, compared to like Call of Duty and like the mechanics of movement. Right, the Call of Duty has a lot closer mechanics of movement. Like your actual arm moves correctly, your leg moves correctly, you walk correctly. So that movement and rendering the textures on top of that movement is a big thing compared to like Fortnite. Your legs move. I don't think your torso ever moves. Like okay, maybe your gun moves a little bit, but like yeah, you don't have near the dynamic texture rendering as you would in Call of Duty or something, right? So like that divergence, and in Minecraft, like you swing your hammer or whatever, and you have blocks that have texture on them, like very simplistic game renderings, but they're still popular, right? And so that was kind of the topic to kind of think through and talk through
Well,
was that kind of interesting divergence we saw to like not all games have to be as good looking as they can be with current hardware.
like Minecraft, obviously, that's a big one just because one, it looks horrible. Um, because everything's in blocks. Like everything's. I mean, and I don't know when Minecraft came out, but it was like what late 2000s, 2009. So
Right.
um, I'm trying to think of some other games that came out around then. I mean, Call of Duty, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, World at War came out around then. So
League of Legends.
League of Legends. Um, those games are kind of like give you an era of when it came out and what to compare it to. And I mean, for the time, Call of Duty was good, but looking back, obviously, that those games look horrible. Um,
Right. There's
but
kind of an interesting thing to think about is like a lot of the classics that stuck around, they didn't pour near as much effort into making them look photorealistic. So they're a lot more like I don't know what you call it.
focusing on the game, I guess, the story or the kind of the concept of the game, not
Maybe
necessarily just the like character models.
or just building or just building the the game to look more like I don't remember what the word is, but age well over time, right? Like a something that will last. You know, they'll still look good in 20
Like
years versus
Overwatch.
right something that'll still look good in 20 years. Like put more effort into designing something with that could still look good in a while versus like trying to be bleeding edge photorealistic because bleeding edge photorealistic like every 2 years changes, right? And so like that's an interesting thing to think through. Like I don't know of very many games that have hung around for quite a while that went hardcore towards the photorealistic side. It's more the cartoon style of like that style of game. It's not. It's there's a word for it, but it ages well over time, right? It'll still look good in 20 years.
I mean, Battlefield is one of those ones that, like, wow, that looks fantastic. Um, and I mean, it's not as popular as your other FPSs, but I mean, it's still popular. I mean, it's still.
Right, but general rule of thumb, like how many photorealistic games have stuck around for more than 5 to 6 years versus how many games are like cartoonish that have stuck around for more than 5 or 6 years?
I'm sure it vastly outnumbers for the non as realistic character models in game, I guess.
That's kind of what
Uh,
I'm thinking. Is my gut feeling? It says like the games that didn't try to go bleeding edge on the graphics rendering has stuck around a whole lot longer than the games that did go down that route. And I don't know,
I'm,
maybe it's just because the games are different, but I feel like it could be due to the fact that the way they're designed of like we want to be bleeding edge all the time, so they always release a new game to go to the bleeding edge, and then the old game's gonna get lost.
okay, where were we?
Talking about
We were talking about how Minecraft is sticking around because they're more about the game than they are about necessarily the character or the environment, I guess.
yeah, well, if we were just making a extrapolation of like games that last longer tend to be worse looking.
Well, I mean, do we think they look bad in the time, or do we think they look bad looking back 10 years later?
Either
Because
way, in the time probably.
like, okay, obviously Minecraft, we all look at Minecraft and say, okay, that looks bad. In 2009, we all said that looks bad. Like, but Fortnite, I mean, when it came out, it didn't look horrible. I mean, it's cartoon. I mean, it was HD. And it also probably has to do a lot with how often they come out with a game. Because, like, if you think about Call of Duty Battlefield, they come out basically every year. Call of Duty every year, Battlefield every year, couple years. Sports games. they're always about like their high def character models. They show the freckles on somebody and the
Right.
you know skin blemishes, but they come out every year, and so
Right.
do we not play? I mean, there's still people that play not Madden, NCAA. What is it? 2007? No,
Well, just because there's one person on the planet somewhere that still plays it doesn't mean it's a rule of thumb.
no. A lot of people still play this because it was the last NCAA that came out. Uh,
Oh, well, that's different. But also
NCAA
nobody still plays it. Like
2014.
you say, a lot of people. Is it like actually a lot of people, or is it like
Like a
more
decent
than
amount
two
of
people? More than two people.
more than okay. There's 100% more than two people. I'm sure there's probably now. Granted, do they like watch it and uh, absorb it? Let's see. I'll look on on Twitch right now. See if there's anything about it. I'm not seeing anything, but I know people like in college. I'd go over to my friend's room. He was a freshman, and he was playing something on his PS4 or PS3. I was like, "Oh, what are you playing?" He's like, "Oh, NCAA 2014." I was like, "Why that year?" He's like, "Well, that's the last year that came out. Like it has."
Right.
Um, and so I feel like that also plays a huge part, not just the fact that they poured a lot of money into making sure that the game looked up to date and up to standard, and tried to break the mold of what it looked like uh, to try to impress people and sell their game. Because like I said, a lot of these games, I mean, the
Right, but
top.
is it the other way around? Right? Is it the fact that they pour a lot of money into that and it gets out of style in a year or two is the reason why they have to release a new game? I mean, excluding sports games because they have to release a new game because there's different people play every year, right? Different story. But like, does Battlefield have to, or not Battlefield? Does Call of Duty have to release a new game every year due to the fact that it looks so good that it's going to look out of date in a year and a half, or they have to release a new game every year? And does that drive the fact that the older games are not played?
I don't know. I feel like Call of Duty is weird. After about a year, you're kind of tapped out on the game in general. It just feels old and that might just be because they're not releasing a bunch of new content. But speaking of Twitch, Call of Duty is the only game on the top list that is not cartoon. So it was Call of Duty Warzone, Rocket League, Among Us, Overwatch, Super Smash Bros, um, Call of Duty
Among Us
Cold
is a
War,
good
so the
example.
beta, and then Minecraft.
Right. Among Us is an interesting example too. That thing looks like dog hockey.
It doesn't look great, and I don't know if they have like graphical settings. I haven't looked into it
No,
because
no,
it
no,
doesn't
because
like.
there's no need. It'll run at 500 frames per second on your grandmother's Windows 98 computer. There's no need for quality settings.
But I mean, how many of these are AAA titles? I don't know what the definition of like what a AAA title is, but Smash Bros is, Overwatch, and Call of Duty is. I don't know if you consider Rocket League. I don't know what other games. What's their name? Psionic. I don't know if they've come out with any other games. There's probably some popular one that somebody's going to roast me for that I'm forgetting that Sonic helped come out with. But I mean, but Among Us, it's such a weird edge case because it's like a party game, like a community game, like Mafia.
Right. Right. I mean, Edge case is still an interesting case of an example of like you don't have to make games look super amazing to have a popular game.
I mean, Fall Guys was that way. I don't know if you ever watched or seen any Fall Guys stuff, Chance, but uh, Fall Guys is super. Like, it was the game right before Among Us that everybody was like, "Oh, Fall Guys, whoa, this is cool." But I feel like it died out because they're not releasing. I feel like maybe it's easier to release content because they're not pouring as much money into it. That's probably a huge part too.
Maybe.
That's not something I really thought about. Was like they have to, like Call of Duty. I'm sure they have to spend a lot more time like coming out with new content because they need it to look realistic and look
Right.
like a certain way. And like
Right.
the new content that comes out for Fall Guys or Among Us, like okay, it's just a cartoon model. Like nobody knows what this actually is supposed to look like, so we're
Right.
just
You
going to
make
put
it
it
up
out
as you
there.
go. Right. I don't know. Kind of an interesting thing to think about, at least, of not like don't know if you could draw any lines or conclusions, but just interesting to think through of like the different games and how just different things are popular and different things stay popular longer. And it's like, is there a connection between them? Is there not? Kind of think through that. I don't know. Interesting thing to think through.
Well, I mean, Minecraft. One of the things that was like super popular, or that's still super popular about it, is all the mods that people like. They encouraged like modding, like their modding community is like super large.
Right.
Um, Minecraft doesn't have to come out with content every 6 weeks because people are coming out with content for them.
Right. And those mods are based on the server, right?
Yeah.
They're installed in the server, right? So you can play on other people's servers and have different content.
Yeah. I believe. I'm not super into the multiplayer aspect of Minecraft besides like the regular vanilla, but
I'm pretty sure it's on the
Smash
server.
Bros, Super Smash Bros is interesting.
Right.
And I mean, I know we talked about how how Nintendo basically just came out with like nostalgia characters, and they're banking on that every time. But I mean, I don't know when the last Super Smash like life cycle of Super Smash Bros.
Well, the
But
life cycle was that they created the game on GameCube, right? Was it on GameCube that it first came out?
Nintendo 64 is the one that I
64.
remember.
All right, Nintendo 64, and they're like, "Oh, this is still popular. Let's play it on GameCube." So now we have Super Smash on GameCube, and then the Wii came out, and they're like, "Oh wait, people still play this. Let's put it on the Wii." And then
Now it's on Switch.
now it's on the next console. Like they just carried their titles forward. They haven't actually produced anything. I say that Wii Bowling was new, right? When they came out with Wii Bowling, that was new. They didn't have a Wii Bowling game because Wii didn't exist. But like they typically just carry their titles forward. Mario Kart, Super
So
Mario.
99 was the first year on Nintendo 64, then GameCube 2001, and then it lasted 7 years.
Because Super Smash Bros. Hasn't changed at all since they released it on Nintendo 64, right?
I mean, obviously they improve the graphics,
but it hasn't changed at all as a game, right?
No, I mean they've added new map. Yeah, I mean the essence of it has not changed.
Have they even added new maps?
Yeah. They have definitely new maps.
Okay.
I mean the competitive maps are all the same, like style, but like as far as non-competitive maps, I mean they add those. Yeah, but I mean 2008, 2014, and 2018. So super inconsistent on when they come out. Like
that's because they just come out with a release new console.
So because the first year was first like life cycle was 2 years, then it was 7 years.
Yeah, just because they just released a new console, dude. there's no Mario, there's no Super Smash Bros. Life cycle. Yeah. It's we released a new console, so we have to update the game to play on the new console.
Well, I mean, it makes you think. Do you think they're coming out, or do you think they're working on a new Smash, or do you think they're just waiting for the console to come out and then they just release it?
25 seconds porting the old Smash to the new console whenever they release new Smash.
I get that.
That's what they do. Like, make it work on the new console. Done. Cool. Bye.
Think about adding a new character, maybe.
No.
Well, I mean, they've added new characters. I mean,
they haven't come out with any new characters.
They come out, and Minecraft Steve just came out, dude. They just crossed
Minecraft
over.
Steve, perfect.
You even know who that is?
No.
He's from Minecraft. He's like the default character for Minecraft.
You said Minecraft Steve. I assumed he was from Minecraft.
Chance is an idiot, guys. But anyways, so
you get a block for a hammer or something? You just swing your hammer or whatever?
I don't know. No, there is hammers. I was gonna say, but there's Minecraft or not Minecraft. Mine pickaxes. Sorry, losing my words. There's pickaxes, and he can like drop creepers and stuff. But yeah, I mean the top 8 games. Well, actually, the third most watched thing on Twitch right now is just chatting.
Perfect.
So that's us. If we were live on Twitch, we'd have all 320,000 viewers.
I'm sure. You hear us BS about how awful video games look.
Well, when it comes to video games, is it the software or the hardware that's limiting it?
Usually the hardware. So it depends. Minecraft isn't limited by anything because it's just you can run it at 500 frames per second on your grandmother's Windows 98 computer. Like it's not limited. Period. However, a lot of games that actually try are limited by hardware. Usually, it's a hardware limitation, right? That's why you buy a bigger, nicer graphics card. Is because of hardware limitations. So you can only make the texture so big. You can only make the resolution so high. You can only make the graphics quality so high. Like you can only make so many moving objects. You can only make so many before you run out of processing power. And so that's really the limiting factor is the processing power usually.
Your processing power usually of your GPU, not
Usually
your CPU,
GPU.
like in my case. But I mean, for your other games, I mean, you max them out and then you run 200 frames like League of Legends.
Right. Yeah. You can run League on anything. You can run Fortnite on anything. You can run Minecraft on anything. You can run Overwatch on nearly anything. You can almost run Valorant on anything, right? Like all these cartoonish games, you can run on anything because the hardware's not limiting and the software's not limiting. Nothing's limiting it. It's just the fact that textures they picked were cartoons, and so they're easy to render versus something that's more photorealistic.
If Activision listens to this, of course they will. Do you think they should come out with a cartoon game to kind of test that bounds? Or do you think that would just be a waste of money because they're going away from their audience? I guess.
I don't know.
And I'm not saying like a full release title of like next year's Call of Duty is going to be all in cartoon. I'm saying like we're going to release this game this way and also in cartoon, or like you can swap back and forth maybe. Because there's there's games like the Halo Master Chief. You can swap between two different graphics. You can swap between the modern graphics that were just remastered, or you can swap between the old graphics and use the old graphics.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if maybe something like that. I guess you put your graphical settings too low, it might look like a cartoon.
Maybe, but like I don't even know if it's a question of like it's more of a philosophy behind the game you want to design, right? So it's not really just a matter of produce something, because like you have artists and you have to come up with a story and like there's all sorts of stuff that goes into making a game. So it's not really just as easy as like, oh, we're gonna make one that looks like garbage and one that's gonna look good, because that's not really. You have to start at the very beginning and design your story around like however you want to, like the big picture goals, right? So like it's more of a big picture question than a like, oh, we're just gonna throw the different graphics on it.
We're just going to swap the
Right, because
character
like
models to cartoons.
you put cartoons in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and it's not probably not going to play the same, right? Like, I don't know if you would do that. So like, is it a question? So the question of like, what do they do? I think we've seen that like you should try everything as far as video games are concerned, because I don't think we've seen like a consistent like this should win. I mean, like, okay, they release a new Call of Duty every year, and they've kind of got that going for them, but like Fortnite, like who would have guessed Fortnite, or who would have guessed like Rocket League, or who would have guessed like when these games came out, who would have guessed they would have blown up Among Us, right? Plenty of current games that are pretty big. Nobody would have guessed when they came out that they would have been blow up as big as they were. They just like were trying something, right? Fortnite, they were trying something, and it happened to work out. So like, I don't think it's a simple question of how do you build a game. It's a question of do you have an idea for a game, and you build that idea, and then uh, see how it turns out. Um, my hypothesis earlier was more of like a general trend of like the video games that aren't so timely about like the graphics tend to do better. And it, like I say, I don't know if it's a question of like storylines, or it's a question of like how they built the game, or it's a question of like just the
Game
graphics
mode.
last longer, like game modes. Like I don't know what the theory behind like what the driving factor is, but it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, I mean, you can draw what's the term?
Correlation.
Correlation does not equal causation, right? So like just because the games that look worse tend to stick around a little longer, that doesn't mean that's why they stick around longer. It's correlation versus causation, right? So correlation does not mean causation. So interesting thing to think through and think about, but also maybe not even close to the right actual reason. But
Because like
interesting nonetheless.
Warzone will be Warzone, obviously a battle royale, will be the first Call of Duty to span more than a year.
Right.
And that's because of game mode. And
Right.
they also, I think they intended it to obviously last longer. Because I mean, for Call of Duty, they plan on, okay, we'll come out with this one this year, next year. Like, this is what we're going to have. Because they have to tell. I mean, obviously, they have the next Call of Duty's playing out probably for the next, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. So they have those planned out. So, like, as a community, we expect them to come out. As far as Warzone, they told everybody, we see this as lasting a long time, so don't expect another Warzone.
Right.
And so maybe telling your community, like, and I actually fully expected on this one, this Call of Duty, was like, okay, we're going to make this one last 2 years because they had a bunch of drama in the background for Call of Duty Cold War. They actually had to ask another one of the studios. So there's 3 studios. There's Treyarch, Infinity Ward, and Sledgehammer. So Sledgehammer Games this would be their second Call of Duty title this year, but they were like really far behind and had some drama or something in the background. So Activision stepped in and said, hey, Treyarch, this is your game now. So they took Sledgehammer's work, sped everything up to meet the timeline or the deadline.
Right.
So I was expecting them to say, oh, actually, this last Call of Duty, we're just going to have updates come out for it, and it'll last 2 years. It'll last for the next one until we get it figured out. But which I would have been fine with. I like this Call of Duty. Now, granted, I still yell at it and everything, but like I still enjoy it. But with everybody going to the next one, like I'm gonna go to the next one just because I enjoy that. Playing, I'd rather play with my friends than play with a bunch of randoms online.
Right. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's a question of like that. It's more of a question, like I say, so maybe the interesting conversation to have in 2 to 3 to 4 or 5, 10 years. I don't know what the timeline is, but like Fortnite versus Warzone, interesting conversation to have of like what's the difference? Because there's no difference like as far as gameplay goes, other than like some very basic things. So like, what's the difference?
The top level is very similar, is what you're saying.
Coke versus, is it a Coke versus Pepsi difference, or is it like, is Warzone going to fade in the background because Activision doesn't care? Is it like, are they still both going to be around? Is Fortnite going to stick around and Warzone go away because everybody stops playing it? Maybe it's more of an interesting question to think about in the 5 to 10 years after that story plays out. Because there's kind of like there's not really a great set
There's
of
not
games
really an answer.
here.
Yeah.
Right, so there's like Call of Duty and Valorant, like those are similar, right? Like Overwatch is kind of in that boat too. So you have those
CSGO and Valorant.
CSGO. So you have kind of that genre of games. You have the Battle Royale games, but like Fortnite won that so far. Warzone is trying its hand at it. So you kind of see that play out, but that hasn't played out yet. And like I said, about the first-person shooters hasn't really played out yet either, right? Like 007 went away, right? Like, but
So they lost.
Right. So like, but like Valorant, Overwatch, like a lot of those are still the game's still the jury's still out basically of like who's going to win that game, or if all of them stick around, it becomes a Coke versus Pepsi type thing. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out, but I don't know. Like I say,
Coke versus Pepsi. Yeah, I mean, I obviously don't want just one FPS to be out. Like
there's not just going to be one, but like you have a winner, right? So at some point, it's either going to be a clear-cut winner, or there's going to be a Coke versus Pepsi deal. Of
Fortnite is still different than
hours, right?
Warzone is still different than Fortnite, not just based on like the game.
Nuanced differences, right? Like gameplay is the same though, right? Like
I mean,
you drop in,
third
you kill
person,
100 people,
yeah.
right? You drop in and you kill 100 people. The gameplay is still the same.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, one's third person, and they have like a few, like you said, nuances that are different. But you say Fortnite won that, but I mean, Fortnite's kind of dying. I mean, there's still kids that are going to play it. Like, I think it'll be one of those games where kids still play it. You turn 8 years old and now you play Fortnite. You turn 16 years old, now you play Call of Duty or whatever, 14, whatever the age is. Now you start to play Call of Duty. Like,
right.
And I mean, you always have the nostalgia of playing Fortnite, so you'll go back and play every once in a while or play with your friends. But I don't know. It's a weird dynamic with Fortnite compared to the other games.
Right. And that kind of leads into another topic I thought we could talk about is nostalgia games. of like, so there's plenty of historic games that everybody still plays, or everybody plays all the time, or everybody still plays once in a while. Um, Pac-Man's an example. Tetris is an example. Uh, Galaga, like Donkey Kong, Super Smash Bros, Mario Kart. So there's a lot of nostalgia games people play. Pong, like people still play Pong. So like there's nostalgia games you still play, and some nostalgia games people play all the time. Do we think the trend's going to continue? Like in 20 years, are we still going to play current gen titles and like for nostalgia? Right? Are you going to go back and play Call of Duty Modern Warfare? Are you going to go back and play Fortnite? Are you going to go back and play Rocket League in 20 or 30 years? That's kind of another interesting thing to think about is the nostalgia side of things.
So I would think that I would play the nostalgia item. Like, obviously, I can't say that the things right now that I'm doing will be nostalgic because they're happening right now, so they can't be nostalgic. But like, I still have nostalgia for Modern Warfare 2 and COD 4 Modern Warfare, COD 4 Modern Warfare, and like I still go back and play those every once in a while because the servers are still up. But I don't know. I can't. Like I said, I can't tell if the game is going to be nostalgia. I mean, I still play Pokemon every once in a while.
Right. So another interesting correlation is cars, right? So like cars, we kind of had the golden era of cars, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And it seems like we aren't growing out of the 50s, 60s, and 70s as far as classic cars go. Like some people like stuff in the 80s and 90s and I mean 2000s are just gross. But like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I feel like at the time, like you would, when you looked at cars, you'd be like, okay, well, that's going to last a while. That's going to be around for a while. Like we're going to, like that still look, is going to look good in the future. In the 80s and 90s, I don't feel like that was a thing. In the 2000s, that definitely wasn't a thing. Cars were ugly. In the 90s, cars were ugly. Like we started a trend in like the 80s, just went downhill, right? Cars just got ugly. And so like, is that trend going to be the same with video games of like, oh, we're going to keep playing the really old stuff, but then like nothing else ever goes nostalgic. And maybe with cars, we just haven't seen a long enough time frame to see like the 80s and 90s and 2000s go nostalgic, but those are still ugly. So like, if video games follow that trend of like the very early stuff will still be nostalgic, and then nothing else will go nostalgic. You know?
Well, I feel like every era of people, I guess I wouldn't say generation because generations can span so many different years. I don't want to say era, including like a 5-year span, maybe 10-year span of these people will think this is nostalgic if they experience this.
But like, I think a freaking 1955 freaking Bel Air is nostalgic, right? Like, I didn't experience that in 1955, right? Like, I didn't experience the first Pac-Man, but I'll still play Pac-Man.
Yeah, but you played it as a kid, right? I'm guessing.
Sure, but like,
The car, I can't speak for the car. I don't really have that much attachments to cars. I mean, I'm like, oh wow, that modern car or that sports car looks really good. But like, I'm not a nostalgia guy when it comes to cars. But I feel like everybody's going to have their own nostalgic game,
probably
like
true, but I'm talking
or
like more
nostalgic
macro
era.
trends.
Okay. Because like I think about Fortnite. I haven't played that game in a year and a half, and it's not nostalgic for like I think back to the times like the good times I had with my bros and my friends of like, oh, those were good times. But like I don't want to get back on Fortnite and play. Like it doesn't make me want to play.
Right.
And like, is that considered nostalgic? Because I think back to those times, or is it not because I don't go back and play it?
I'm talking about the going back and playing it. Like, are those games going to become classic games that we go back and play all the time?
I think for kids,
Or that we
Fortnite
want
will
to keep
definitely
around?
be. For kids, Fortnite will definitely be. For Call of Duty, I always have those like 3 games that like I loved these games. These games were golden era for me. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and Black Ops 2. Those are like the nostalgia games for me. um, and I'll go back and play those all the time.
Right, but in 50 years, you're gonna go back and play it.
If I have access to it, most likely. I might not play it for 6 hours,
Because
but
that's kind of
I
where
might play it for like an hour.
that's kind of where my question was getting at.
Okay.
Is like we're like 40 or 50. I don't know when Pac-Man first came out. We're like 40 or 50 years after the first Pac-Man came out, and it's still around. So like on that macro side of things, of like keeping things around, will current generation games be that way? Of like somebody does the work and effort to keep them around. I say somebody, our team or whoever does the work to actually keep them around, so you can still play them in 40 or 50 years, right? Will you have that with current generation games, or we just not like? Are we designing throwaway games where the games we played 1, 2, 5, 10 years, and here in 30, 40 years, the games are like nobody's going to know they existed?
I don't think so because I think technology is going to be good enough that, like, I mean, that's how it is right now. Like, all I got to do is throw in the disc from back in the day, and it'll work on my current Xbox, my Xbox One
Right.
X. So we won't have teams like restoring those. Like, it'll just be an online game that I just play on my Xbox.
Right, but at some point, Microsoft's going to say we're tired of putting in all the work and effort to keep it backwards compatible, and they're going to say hop in a lake, like because that's what happened with Pac-Man, right? Basically, Pac-Man has to be rewritten every 10 or 15 years because nothing's backwards compatible, and so like that side of the coin, or like Super Smash Bros. For instance, they rewrite it every time they get a new console because the Wii was backwards compatible with the GameCube. But other than that, Nintendo's never backwards compatible. And so, like, somebody has, it doesn't matter if it's you or some random person or the company that originally created it to make stuff backwards compatible. Somebody's going to do the work to keep backwards compatibility going. And so, like, the current generation Xbox that can play old Xbox games, like, Microsoft put a ton of work into that to keep it backwards compatible. And so, like, are these games going to be throwaway games, or are these games going to be that we keep doing the work to keep them going, or like is somebody going to go and rewrite Fortnite in 20 or 30 years to work on
A
Windows
PC.
55, right? Like Windows 110, whatever it is, right?
I'm sure. I'm sure some of those big games. I'm sure, but I mean, we can keep going a loop on this, but I don't. I think somewhat, but I don't know if it'll ever be to the scale just because of how much like work it takes to get a like Miss Pac-Man. Like, I mean, I can log on to my internet right now and play Miss Pac-Man if I wanted to,
Right.
but I choose to pay for the person to refurbish a Miss Pac-Man machine. But I don't know if somebody is going to pay somebody to refurbish an Xbox 360 so that I can play Call of Duty 4. And I think that's your question. I
That's what
don't
I'm
think they
getting at.
will, but I think people will still like find a way to download it onto their game. They won't necessarily like pay for a 360 to be refurbished. They'll just pay for another license or something or an emulator on their computer. Does that make
But
sense?
that's where I'm getting at. Will somebody actually care about trying to dig up that old game to play it, or was there going to be enough of a following in the future to keep it around? Because there's
Yeah.
plenty of games that never got a following that it will be impossible to play today. Plenty of games in the past that like developed a game, built a game, whatever, got a little bit of a following. People played it, and then it lost everything. And so like you're never going to find it ever again, unless you go like find some PC warehouse that was like, oh, we have a whole case of those in the back with, like whatever,
Yeah, I guess it'd be like my
compatible
dad.
computers,
My dad loved Jet Fighter 2, I think it is.
right? And there's plenty of games probably similar to that one that nobody did the work to keep it around, and so it's gone.
Yeah.
So, like, are we designing games like that right now, or do we actually have any real like games that are going to be survive the test of time, basically, um, to be around in 40 years?
My
Because I
hot
mean,
take is
you may
no.
want you may want Call of Duty 4 to be around, but like, does enough people in the world want Call of Duty 4 to be around to actually make it be around? You know,
Like I
or
said,
will it be the fact if you have to have a Call of Duty 4 disc plus an Xbox 360 because Xbox Live's gone in 40 years, right? Like Microsoft's belly up in 40 years, 30 years. So Xbox Live's gone, so you can't play online. So you actually physically have to have a disc, and you have to have 3 or 4
It's
PlayStation or 3 or 4 Xbox 360s like on the same network, all plugged in together with
you play on
antique
LAN.
network switches to support playing like online, but you all have to be in the same room with antique network switches and antique Xboxes to make it happen. Everybody's got to have a disc, right? Like, where's it going to land?
I think we'll get to a point where it'll just be online, but
Yeah, but what happens when a company that runs it online goes bankrupt? Right?
man,
What
you
happens when
have,
Microsoft goes away? Like all this stuff that has Xbox Live integrations go on.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Call of Duty 4, fellas.
So yeah, like it may be impossible to play some of these games here in 20, 30, 40 years when like Sony, whatever the frick Sony's called, or Xbox Live's gone, or name any other like Steam's gone, or name any other like thing you integrate with. Epic Games is no longer a thing, right? So you can't even still play Fortnite because it was an online game, and now the servers aren't there because Epic Games went bust, right? Like, like what's it going to look like with the way we're currently designing stuff?
Yeah. What's your hot take on that?
What?
That it won't be? Your hot take is that it won't be around? Or your take on that?
Yeah, my take on all 99% of current games is they won't be around in 40 years. And current games, I mean anything developed after about 2009, 2010 won't be around because it won't have the infrastructure. We've been designing games that only work with online platforms and like super like awful DRM and stuff. So like they're not going to be around in 30 years, 40 years. It's not going to be a thing.
I think the online community will be there, but as far as like it being supported, I'm not for sure. Probably not.
No, that's what I was getting at. Is I don't think there's gonna be enough of a following of like people that still want to play the games to make it happen. And B, like I said, I think all these companies are gonna go belly up, and we've designed it on super awful server infrastructure and super awful infrastructure anyway. So it's like you're not gonna be able to, just because it's not physically possible because you can't go run the servers. So anyway, I don't know. That's my idea, but like I said, I don't know. That's the conversation.
Yeah. Well, if that's it, I can sign us off. I don't know if you had anything else, Chance, or
Nah.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for stopping by. It's getting a little late for us, but thanks for stopping by. It's been Click Gaming's weekly podcast, episode number 6, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.